We are at the final Parsha of 54 Parshios. We began many moons ago, many months ago, the 7th cycle of the Parsha podcast, and now we are nearing the finish line. We're at the final episode of the Parsha podcast with the unending help and aid of the Almighty. How fortunate are we that we get to study Torah together each week. Of course, year number 8, Parsha podcast cycle number 8 is in our sights, and we have a wonderful plan for this upcoming year. It's going to be deep and deeper to try to go behind the veneer, beneath the surface of the Parsha each week, to try to get a little glimpse of some of the depths lying beneath the surface, to not just read the text, but to also get a sense of the subtext. But that, of course, is for next week, for next year. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We're still in year number 7, and we have Parshas V'zos HaBerachah, the final installment of the Torah, the final Parsha of the Torah, the final 41 verses of the Torah. This is the end. Now, it's interesting. This is the only Parsha that's not read on a Shabbos. Every one of the Parshios is read on Shabbos, with the exception of the final one. It is read on Simchas Torah, which this year falls out on Sunday. And now we're still in the festival of Sukkot. And Shabbos is going to be, of course, the Shmini Atzeres. And then Sunday will be Simchas Torah. Our brethren in Israel actually merge Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah into one. So they're going to read V'zos HaBeracha on Shabbos, coincidentally. In the diaspora, we're going to read it on Sunday. And the next week, we have Parshas Bereshis. Now, Parshas V'zos HaBeracha is broken down to 2 parts. We have the blessings that Moshe bestows upon the tribes before he passes. And then we have the end, where Moshe says his final goodbyes to the nation. He ascends the mountain and he passes. And we have the death, the burial, and the eulogy of Moshe. But today I want to focus on the blessings of the tribe. Every tribe, with the exception of Shimon, receives a blessing. Now, this is not the only time in the Torah where the tribes, where the components of the nation have received a blessing. Of course, Jacob, at the end of his life, at the end of Genesis, he too gathered his sons, the progenitors of these tribes, and he gave them his final blessing. He blessed them, and he passed. And now Moshe is on the final day of his life, and he too gathers not the tribes, the individuals, but the entire nation comprised of the descendants of those sons of Jacob, and he's going to give them a blessing before he passes. And these 2 blessings are connected. The Ramban cites a midrash who tells us that Moshe picked up exactly where Jacob left off. Jacob gave a blessing to these individuals, and now they have burgeoned from just being a family, 12 sons of Jacob. They've burgeoned into an entire nation, 12 tribes. And the themes and the ideals and the concepts that were present in Jacob's blessings are now going to be amplified, not to these individuals, but to the entire tribes that they spawned. And I want to focus specifically on 2 of the tribes, the old duo of Shimon and Levi. And we'll start with Shimon. Shimon is not mentioned at all in the blessing of Moshe. He's not featured. He is omitted. The tribe of Shimon is conspicuously absent from Moshe's blessing. And it's a great mystery as to why. You have all the tribes, sons of Jacob. Of course, we have 2 of the grandsons of Jacob that became tribes on their own, Ephraim and Manasseh. But we have all these tribes, and one of them is Shimon. And Moshe is giving blessings to all the tribes, with the exception of Shimon. Why is Shimon omitted? How come they don't get a blessing like everyone else? So, of course, the commentaries all notice the glaring absence of Shimon, and they offer their explanations. Rashi tells us that, well, Shimon they have some rough history. The tribe of Shimon was primarily the members of the nation that participated in that awful sin with the daughters of Moab, and they worshiped the idols. We remember that in Parshat, the end of Parshat, Balak. And their leader, the head of their tribe, Zimri, he was killed, skewered by Pinchas. And therefore there's a black eye, there's a blemish. There's something wrong with this tribe. And as a punishment, it seems, they were omitted. That's what Rashi says. The Ramban doesn't like it. He says, wait a minute, they're a tribe or they're not a tribe? They are a tribe? Okay, well, then they should be included. So he doesn't go with Rashi's explanation. He offers a different explanation. And he says, well, there's 12 tribes, but really there's 14, because we also have the two sons of Joseph. So we have Jacob's 12 sons, and one of Jacob's sons is Joseph, and he has two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and they got grandfathered in, so to speak, by Jacob. At the end of his life, he tells them, well, you two, Ephraim and Manasseh, my grandsons, are like my sons, Reuven and Shimon, and therefore really there are kind of 14 tribes. But there can only be 12. In any given area, in any dimension, there can only be 12. There are 12 months, and there are 12 zodiac signs. There's always got to be 12. There's 12 sons. Esav has 12 sons. Yishmael has 12 sons. Nachar has 12 sons. The number 12 is very significant, and it's limited. There cannot be 11, and there cannot be 13 or 14. And therefore Moshe, Ramban tells us, he is matched out at blessing only 12 tribes. So, well, if Joseph's two sons are represented, well, then we don't have Joseph, so we're down to 13, from 14 to 12 plus 2. If we're not including Joseph, we just have his sons, that is 13. Someone has to go. And typically it's Levi. Levi's in a class on their own. But Moshe really wanted to give a blessing to Levi, and therefore someone else had to go. There was a need to exclude one of the tribes, and Shimon was a good candidate for exclusion because they're small in number, and they're scattered amongst the other tribes. When the land of Canaan is going to be divided up, the tribe of Shimon is going to be scattered throughout the land. And therefore, if I give a blessing, Moshe reasoned, according to Ramban, if I give a blessing to all the tribes, that blessing will be applied to everyone who lives in the land of said tribe, and each Shimonite will absorb the blessing of the particular tribe that they are scattered amongst. And therefore, they will be able to receive a blessing vicariously from the host tribe, so to speak, in which they are going to dwell. And therefore, if we're going to omit someone, it's going to be Shimon. That makes sense according to the Ramban. Today, I want to suggest maybe a different approach as to why Shimon was omitted, and maybe what the lesson for us is. And I want to start by zooming out a little bit and talking about the idea of tribes. Moses is giving a blessing to the tribes. Well, why do we have to have tribes? Why not simplify? We love to simplify. Have a single, indivisible nation, one nation, under God, all equal, all uniform, e pluribus unum. Why do we have to have tribes? The notion of tribes is a foreign idea to us. Outside of political parties, we don't really have tribes in the United States. I guess the Native Americans would qualify as well. But what is this idea of taking a nation I get, founded by the founding fathers, patriarchs, matriarchs, organized to follow a certain set of ideals, basic tenets that we share in common, living in a shared land? What's the idea of tribes? To kind of take the nation and break it down into smaller portions. Every tribe is given a certain part of the land, and they're separate. What's the idea? And of course, this is a big subject, but the Ramban in Genesis, so this is a long time ago, we're closer to the next cycle of Genesis than the previous one. When Abram is renamed Abraham in chapter 17 of Genesis, he's given the mitzvah of circumcision, and God says, no one's going to call you Abram anymore. Now you're Abraham. There's a very interesting verse. This is chapter 17, verse 6. God says, you will be fertile, exceedingly fertile, and you will spawn nations and kings. So who are these nations that are going to emerge from Abraham? So Rashi says, well, it can't be Ishmael because Ishmael is alive at that time. Ishmael was born before this point. So it has to be Jacob. He's going to found the Jewish nation. And Esav, who's going to found the nation of Edom. Those are these nations that will emerge from Abraham. That is Rashi's interpretation of Genesis 17:6. And the Ramban says, no, you got this wrong. God is instructing Abraham about the circumcision. What does that have to do with Esav? Esav does not fulfill the circumcision. Esav himself was never circumcised. And Esav, the nations of Esav, they were never commanded to circumcise. It cannot be that when Abraham is being told about the circumcision and is being blessed that many nations will emerge from him, it cannot mean that it's referring to Esav. Instead, says Ramban, the Jewish nation is actually a confederacy, a collection of 12 nations. Every tribe is its own nation. Now that, of course, compounds our problem. We have a hard time understanding the whole idea of tribes, and the Ramban is telling us that, well, every tribe is really a nation. A nation, I understand. A nation is focused on a certain path, a certain set of values, a certain set of ideals. They stand for something. But the notion of every tribe having its own land and being considered its own nation, that is a problematic one for us. And the idea behind this is, commentaries tell us, every tribe is different. They have different qualities. They have different strengths. They have different characteristics. And they each have a different role to play. There is only one nation, but there are like mini nations within this bigger frame of the nation. There are the rules that govern everyone. We call that the 13 principles of faith, the Torah. But within that, provided that there's complete fidelity to the general understanding of what it means to be this nation, there are legitimate factions that might as well be considered independent nations, because each one of these tribes is going to focus on something else, is going to emphasize something else, is going to have different strengths, and going to direct its service of God. Of course, the entire nation is all about service of God, all about advancing the Abrahamic mission. But every tribe is going to find their own little corner, their own little point of strength that they're going to emphasize and they're going to use towards the service of God. As an example, we know even today, you go to a Sephardic synagogue and they pray one way. And you go to an Ashkenaz synagogue and they pray a different way. And a Yemenite synagogue, and it's different. And the Hasidic synagogues, well, they have their own way of praying. Why don't we standardize everything? Make it all uniform. And the answer is that every tribe, all 12 of them, have their way of worshiping God, of serving God. They have their own talents and their own strengths and their own characteristics. And they direct that, they channel that, they deploy that in the service of the Almighty. And just as by the splitting of the sea, there were 12 walkable paths, one for every tribe. In heaven, the Kabbalists tell us, there are gates through which prayer enters. And there are 12 of them, because every tribe has their own lingo, their own method, their own system of prayer. Because they're different, and their little mini nation within the larger nation have their own way of, so to speak, communicating, praying before the Almighty. Yes, the tribes are almost like independent nations, says Ramban, amongst the general larger nation of the Jewish people. We're a multinational nation. And every tribe has to find their unique tribal mission. What makes us different? What makes us unique? And how do we harness our particular qualities to advance the agenda of the nation at large, to advance the Abrahamic mission, to utilize in service of the Almighty? That is what it's meant by tribes. And this is what Moshe is telling them. Moshe has been telling the Jewish nation the Torah since Exodus. And at the end of his life, he says there's actually details that every tribe needs to emphasize. And every tribe is going to be accorded a particular part of the land of Israel. And it's not random, it's based upon prophecy. Why? Because in that particular part of the land, that particular tribe can actualize its mission. And he's telling us in these blessings, each tribe, they have their own way of advancing the cause. They have their own style of worshiping, of serving the Almighty. And that is what Moshe is doing. It's not just random blessings. It's all targeted. Every tribe needs to know what you need to contribute. You specifically, your tribe specifically, what do you need to contribute? What do you need to focus on? What do you need to excel at? Now you're on the doorstep of entering the land, and every tribe's going to go to its own tribal territory. You have to know, Moshe blesses the tribes. You have to know what you need to emphasize, what you need to focus on. And that is why he is doing this blessing to the tribes. And again, this is a continuation of Jacob's blessings. What did Jacob do? Jacob revealed to each one of his sons their particular qualities, what makes them special. To use Kabbalistic lingo, he revealed to them the root of their soul. What you in particular need to do to channel your uniqueness towards the service of God. And that was Jacob to his sons. And now these sons have burgeoned into a great nation, a family of nations. Each tribe is its own nation. And Moshe is continuing where Jacob left off. Moshe is following Jacob's lead, and he's directing each mini nation amidst the nation of Israel how exactly to deploy their unique tribal quality in the service of God. Let's get back to Shimon. What was Jacob's blessing for Shimon? So if you recall, back in the end of Genesis, it wasn't really like a blessing. It was more of an admonishment. It was more of a rebuke. When he, so to speak, blessed his sons, he tells Shimon and Levi, they are lumped together. He says, you are brothers, but your weaponry is stolen craft. Shimon and Levi, you are co-conspirators in the deception of Shechem, when they kidnapped and harassed and assaulted Dinah. They deceived the city of Shechem and they slaughtered everyone. And they proposed initially to murder Joseph, and they ultimately settled on selling him as a slave. In those two crimes, Shimon and Levi were a tag team. And on his deathbed, Jacob rebuked them. Your brothers, you are a unit motivated by brotherhood. When your sister's kidnapped, you deceive the whole city to circumcise. And then when they're weak, you slaughter every man of the city. And what was your justification for that? The verse tells us that they reasoned, are they going to treat our sister like a harlot? If you mess with our sister, you and all your countrymen are dead. That's how they viewed their family. They had such a tight kinship with their family that they were even willing to deploy the weaponry, the craft of Esav, to achieve their aim. Same thing with their crimes against Joseph. Joseph is having megalomaniacal dreams, and he's causing rifts amongst the family. He's bad-mouthing some of the brothers to Jacob. He is threatening the well-being, the continuity, the viability of the family. And Shimon and Levi, they don't tolerate this, and they want to kill him, and they ultimately settled to just sell him as a slave for 20 pieces of silver. These brothers are totally intolerant of anything that they deemed to destabilize their family. And even Joseph wasn't spared their wrath. And Jacob gave them a stinging rebuke. Your brother's all right, but look how you're behaving. You're behaving with the stolen craft of Esav. Of course, it's important to maintain the family and the pride and the brotherhood and the kinship. But when you slaughter an entire city and you want to murder and you just settle for selling as a slave your brother Joseph, those tactics, they come from Esav. And therefore, Jacob declares, this is again all in Jacob's blessing to, so to speak, blessing, so-called blessing to Shimon and Levi. Jacob declares that in the future crimes of this family, I want no part. And thus when Korach, the Levite, commits his crime, it doesn't say that he's a descendant of Jacob. And when Zimri commits his crime, it again does not attribute him to Jacob. Jacob is washing his hands clean of these crimes. It doesn't come from him. It comes from Esav. All that was the blessing, so to speak, accorded to Shimon together with Levi at the end of Genesis. Jacob, of course, was a prophet, and he's able to see into the future. And he sees how the descendants of Shimon and Levi will behave in the same way as their ancestors will. The descendant of Levi, Korach, will behave like Levi in a manner of Esav. The descendant of Shimon, Zimri, will behave in the ways of Shimon. And he says, I want no part of it. Don't name me in their crimes. Here's a critical point. This is a very, very, very subtle point. If you look at Rashi's comment to Jacob's statement to not have any part in the future crimes of the descendants of these two brothers of Shimon and Levi, he differentiates between the future crime emanating from Shimon and the future crime emanating from Levi. And he says that when Zimri committed his crime, it wasn't just Zimri, it was the entire tribe of Shimon. Whereas when he talks about Korach, he says, Korach, who happened to have been a Levite. And this is a very critical point, differentiating Shimon and Levi. They were together, they were brothers, and they behaved in a way that Jacob was not pleased with. And he tells them, this comes from Esau, not from me. And then he says, in the future, there will be similar behavior from your descendants. However, from the tribe of Shimon, the entire tribe, all the descendants that emanate from Shimon, they're going to be part of this crime, this future crime. Whereas from Levi, it's Korach alone behaving in the manner of Esau. What this tells us is Jacob gives rebuke to Shimon and Levi. On his deathbed, he calls them in, the two brothers, stolen craft of Esau. And ever since that point, Shimon and Levi took very divergent paths. When Korach committed his crime, he was alone amongst the Levites. Whereas when Zimri, from the tribe of Shimon, when he committed his, the entire tribe of Shimon joined alongside him. Collectively, the tribe of Levi, with the exception of Korach, but the masses of the tribe of Levi, they took Jacob's rebuke to heart. There was only one renegade Levite, Korach, who still channeled the spirit of Esau. By contrast, with Shimon, it wasn't just Shimon, the individual, the progenitor of this tribe, the entire tribe. They are still seen, again, decades, centuries later, they are still exhibiting the flaws of their progenitor. They're still acting in the manner of Esau. These two go in very different directions. After Jacob's rebuke, Levi ascends to great heights, the family of the Kohanim, the Levites, of course, the most prestigious family of all, Miriam and Aaron and Moshe. They all come from Levi. And as we shall see, they're going to be lavishly praised by Moshe. And Shimon is not mentioned at all. Why not? Why is Shimon omitted? Here is my speculation. The last day of Moshe's life, all the tribes, they all assemble. Moshe is going to give them a blessing before he passes. Of course, this is a departure from the normal operating procedures. Moshe has been rebuking the nation the whole book. And finally, the very last day, a blessing. And every tribe is mentioned, with the exception of Shimon. That is also a message, a painful message, but a salient one nonetheless. Shimon, you're a brother with some violent tendencies. You behave a little bit like Esau. That is what Jacob told Shimon. Decades, centuries later, we still see it. The fingerprints of Esau are still present on the tribe level now of Shimon. It's not just one renegade, it's not just one Korach, it's everyone. And now every tribe is coming to Moshe, and they're going to get their marching orders. What does this tribe need to do? And the tribe of Shimon comes, and they're waiting for the instruction. What do we need to do? What is our mission? How do we channel our specific qualities, our specific nature for good? And they're waiting, and they're waiting, and they're waiting, and Moshe's done. And their name has not been called. They are omitted. And that is the message. What must you do, Shimon, the tribe of Shimon? Your mission right now is one of suppression. to bottle up your character, to bottle up your instincts. Of course, if someone has a flaw, the ideal way to address it is to repurpose it into an asset. Find a way to channel it in a productive manner. Convert the erstwhile liability into an asset. Not to ignore it, not to deny it, not to pretend it doesn't exist, to find a way to deploy it in a positive way. And that's what Jacob tried to do with Shimon and with Reuven, who was also rebuked. He revealed to them their character, and that's very valuable knowledge. Now you go design a life that takes into account what you've learned, and hopefully find a way to utilize that flaw in a productive way. And somehow it didn't land. Jacob's blessing did not achieve its intended effect with respect to Shimon. And that flaw, where Shimon was behaving like Esav, now it's mushroomed into the whole tribe. It's not just Zimri, it's the whole tribe. They're all behaving like Esav. What does Moshe do? Does he give up on them? No, he gives them a mission. He instructs them further. Now, your mission is to do nothing. Meaning, to take a spiritual palate cleanser. Try to go back to zero. Try to regroup and start from scratch. Go back to square one. You couldn't find a way to channel your flaw. You have to try to regain your stability. Moshe tells them, your job is to stand down. We're having a discussion. How do we proactively use our qualities in our land to achieve the goal of the nation? And you, Shimon, you're not part of this discussion. Your job is to try to suppress your impulses. Everyone's gathering here for a discussion to learn about what our mission is, and Shimon's told, your mission is to not have one. Don't think of how I can direct my qualities in service of God. We tried that once. It didn't work out so well. Now you have to achieve stability. To try to clear away some space so that a foundation can be laid again. That is the message that Shimon's being told. And Levi has a very, very different message. At the end of Moshe's life, Moshe is heaping praise upon the tribe of Levi. He's completely ignoring Shimon and lavishly praising Levi. And he starts with the Kohanic family, the Urim and the Tum, the special element that was placed inside the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. That is for your devout one. They were tested, and they withstood all the tests. And then he speaks about the Levites in the aftermath of the golden calf. You recall the end of Exodus. Moshe descends with the tablets that were etched by God. And he meets Joshua at the foot of the mountain. And they hear noises from the camp. And Joshua misdiagnoses those noises. And they go to the camp and they find the nation reveling with the golden calf. And Moshe sees their frivolity and shatters the tablets. And he takes the golden calf and grinds it into dust. And he forces everyone to drink from the water. He takes the powder and puts it in the water, makes everyone drink like a sota, like a suspected adulteress. And then Moshe issues a clarion call. Moshe gets up. This is chapter 32, verse 26 of Exodus. Moshe gets up in the camp and says, Mi laHashem Elai. Who is loyal to God? Come and join me. And the entire tribe of Levi joins. And he tells them, take your swords and go around the camp and kill all the perpetrators of this horrific crime. And the Levites did it. The Levites, maybe we know that Levi already once went through a city, a camp, and slaughtered lots of people. Now he's doing it again under very different circumstances. And the verse says that there were about 3,000 casualties. And the verse emphasizes that Moshe tells him, go kill the perpetrators, even if they are family members. And now, this is 40 years later, Moshe's praising the Levite family for ignoring the fact that some of their victims were family members. Those who said to their father and mother, I don't see you. And to your brother, I don't recognize you. And to your son, I don't know you. You, the Levites, who were indiscriminate about putting down those criminals because you maintained fidelity to the word of God and you guarded the covenant of the Almighty. And Rashi explains that father, mother, brother, and son cannot be referring to the actual family members of these Levites, because we know the Levites didn't participate at all in the golden calf. So how could it be that a Levite killed his father? Well, if he's a Levite, father's a Levite, and we know no Levites participated in the sin of the golden calf. So what it actually means is maybe their mother is a non-Levite, and their mother's father, which is almost like their father, because parents and grandparents are similar, just legally speaking, and certainly in the literature. So if your maternal grandfather committed the crime of the golden calf, the Levites went and killed him. Oh, and your half-brother from your mother who's a non-Levite, if they committed the crime of the golden calf, I don't recognize you. And similarly, the sons can't be the sons. Instead, it's a grandson. If your daughter married a non-Levite, and your grandson, who's like your son, the Levites would kill them as well. They guarded the word of God, and they observed, they protected the covenant of God. Because in the wilderness, Rashi explains, the people did not want to circumcise. It was considered to be dangerous to circumcise their boys, but the Levites did it nonetheless. That is part of the blessing, chapter 33, verse 9, that is accorded to the Levites. And therefore, verse 10, Moshe tells them, you are deserving of leadership roles. You'll be judges. You'll have Torah leadership. You'll offer sacrifices and incense on the altar. Why? You are deserving of these roles because of your commitment to the Almighty, your bravery, your heroism. In the aftermath of the golden calf, Moshe said, who's loyal to the Almighty? Come join me. And the Levites took up arms even against their own family. And when there was a risk of circumcision in the wilderness, they were willing to risk it because they were not willing to forfeit the covenant of God. So we see, again, two tribes heading in opposite directions. We have the metamorphosis of Levi and the negative, so to speak, progression of Shimon. After Jacob gave a blessing, Shimon doesn't seem to work. The blessing / rebuke doesn't seem to land. And the whole tribe seems to rebel against Moshe. And when Moshe gives the blessing at the end of his life, the tribe is omitted completely. And Levi, of course, he is rebuked alongside Shimon. But come Korach time, it's only Korach who still clings to the ways of Esav, and they become the greatest tribe. Now, in previous Parsha podcasts, we talked about the evolution of these two brothers/tribes and how exactly they diverged. Today, I want to study the metamorphosis of Levi in a different way. Levi was right alongside Shimon. In fact, the only two of the sons of Jacob that were lumped together in their blessing. And they end up on completely opposite ends of the spectrum once these individuals have become tribes, many nations. How exactly did Levi change so thoroughly? And what does that mean for us? So I want to maybe address or approach this question from a very iconic comment in the works of the Rambam. At the end of the book, of the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, if you've ever had the great privilege of studying in yeshiva, it's quite likely that you've heard this quoted many, many times. Rambam was talking about how the tribe of Levi was not accorded their own land in Canaan, and they didn't get the spoils of war. All the other tribes received land, but Levi did not get any land of their own. Instead, they got cities scattered throughout the rest of the tribes. Why was Levi different? So the Rambam tells us, because they were separated from the rest of the nation. They were separated to serve God and to instruct the ways of God and the laws of God to the masses. Quotes our verse 33:10, that they will serve as judges amongst the nation. And therefore, they must be designated and different and differentiated from the rest of the nation and the ways of the world. When everyone goes to war, Levi does not. When everyone inherits land in the land of Canaan, Levi does not get it. They are the servants and the soldiers of God, and He is their portion, and nothing else is their portion. That is Rambam's justification for why Levi is different. And that's not why this comment in Rambam is so famous. It's because the next comment he says is a very shocking and powerful statement. He tells us that this designation of a Levite is portable. It's not only the tribe of Levi that has this special designation of being a servant and a soldier of God. Rather, every person who's alive in the world, and their spirit ascends, and they understand and have a deeper insight, and they want to separate themselves, and they want to stand before God, to serve God, and to worship God, and to know God, and to walk in God's ways. And they want to remove all other obligations. Take all the other yokes and remove them from their neck. Someone like that says, I want to dedicate myself to the service of God, to the exclusion of any other mission in life. Such a person becomes sanctified like the Holy of Holies. And God is his portion. And God is his inheritance forever and ever. And God will take care of him just like God takes care of the Levites. The status of a Levi can be achieved, in the words of the Rambam, by every single person in the world. He doesn't even mention as a prerequisite to be Jewish. This is a stunning comment in Rambam, and it very much seems to violate our Parsha. We were told, Moshe tells us, there's a specific set of reasons why the Levites tower above all the other tribes. They had heroism. Everyone else was scared of doing circumcision, and they did it nonetheless. And then heroism in the aftermath of the golden calf. They were willing to take up arms. Moshe says, who's loyal to God? Come join me. And they all joined. And because of that, they received their special designation to teach, to judge, to be God's people, so to speak. How can Rambam write this is available to all? How can a non-Levite become almost exactly like a Levite? I think this reveals a very deep point over here. Every tribe is like a nation. God tells Abraham, you'll have many nations. Well, what nations are that? Well, those are the tribes. And each nation is different. They have different characteristics. They walked on a different path by the splitting of the sea. They have a different gate in heaven where their prayers go through. And Moshe gives every tribe their own mission statement, their marching orders, what they need to do in their land. And their land, again, is selected with prophecy, because that is the particular land that particular tribe needs to live in to achieve their particular mission. And of course, this would apply to us as well, right? Every person needs to find out kind of what tribe they're part of, what mission that they have in life. And what's Levi? What's he told? You're going to be special. Why? Because when Moshe said, who is loyal to God? You said, I'm ready. And Levi, if you think about it, Levi, when Jacob blessed / rebuked Levi, what did he highlight? Your brothers. You care about family. You care about kinship, and that really motivates you. That is the nature of Levi. And what does Moshe say? Moshe says almost the exact opposite of that. What does he highlight? He highlights the fact that they went and killed their family members. He said to your father and mother, I don't see you. Your brother, I don't know you. Your son, I don't recognize you. What is the quality of Levi? Again, we see a contradiction between what Jacob said, what he highlighted, and what Moshe is focusing on. Here's the answer. Levi disintermediated their character from what their mission is. Levi is the one who says, what I want, what I care about, my qualities, my predispositions, that doesn't matter. Whatever needs to get done, I am loyal to the Almighty. Levi said, the thing that towers above everything else is that when there's a need for someone to stand up for the honor of God, I will do whatever it takes, even if that violates my independent nature. Who is loyal to the Almighty? All the Levites came forth. That is the quality of the Levites. If you think about it, we know, the verse tells us, that the tribe of Issachar, they were the great scholars. They were the judges. But here Levi is told that you're a scholar, you're a judge. Issachar, they were very brilliant. And they had analytical minds. And they became scholars and sages and judges because of their particular aptitude for that kind of service of God. Levi became a leader not because of that, because they said whatever needs to get done will get done. They didn't have an orientation to be a scholar. their orientation was, I am loyal to the Almighty. And in that capacity, where someone is saying, whatever God needs to get done, I will do, okay, that too gives you a position of leadership, not because of your aptitude and your predisposition to that, but because of you saying whatever needs to get done, I will do. Every nation, every tribe, mini nation, is given a portion of land. This is where you will flourish. This is where you will excel. This place, it's the land best suited for you to actualize your potential. Of course, the division of land is not about real estate. It was done prophetically. Every individual tribe, they have a particular mission, tribal mission, and they are placed in a location where they will most likely flourish, where their unique contribution can be most manifested. Levi doesn't have a portion in the land because he doesn't have an individualized mission. Because again, it's not just about aptitude or what qualities, unique qualities I have. Whenever there's a need, Levi rises and answers the call. Who is loyal to God? That is what differentiates Levi. Not their qualities, not their strengths, not their unique characteristics. When there's a need, they rise. As an example, during the war against Midian, chapter 31 of Bamidbar of Numbers, Rashi there tells us, this is chapter 31, verse 5, that there were 12,000 conscripts, 1,000 from every tribe. But there were actually another 1,000. There were 13,000 because there were 1,000 Levites. And Rashi explained, Rashi explains that the 12,000 were different than the 1,000. The 12,000 had to be persuaded, had to be forced, had to be conscripted. The Levites, they always volunteered. They were always ready because their mission is to do whatever needs to get done. If you think about Shimon and Levi, there's an interesting story here to be told. They are given identical diagnoses by Jacob. They're brothers, and they're motivated by brotherhood, but they're acting like Esav. Their craft is stolen from Esav. And therefore Jacob says, I want no part in their future crimes. Korach from Levi and Zimri from Shimon. And what happened? When Zimri did his crime, it was the whole tribe of Shimon. And the only Levite that was guilty in the episode of Korach was Korach himself. Even his sons, we learned, didn't go through with this rebellion. They go in very opposite ways. And now the nation, the family of nations, the tribes are being told what they need to do on a tribal level. And Shimon said, listen, Shimon is told, listen, your mission is to really go back to where it started and try to clean out and eliminate and start from scratch. I don't want you focusing on how to channel your qualities. We tried that once, didn't work out. You have to figure out how to build a stable foundation upon which you can actually build your spiritual edifice. There's not fertile grounds here for you to be with the rest of the tribes, figuring out exactly how to deploy your unique contribution towards the agenda of Abraham. The rest of the tribes are told what they need to do specifically, channeling their individual uniqueness towards the service of God. Shimon's not quite there yet. Levi, he is advanced. He's beyond the rest of the tribes. He's not at the point where He as in the tribe. It's not the point where they're told do something specific. No. They don't do anything specific. They don't think about their qualities and their unique attributes and say, how do I channel that? They are just loyal servants of God. They're part of God's army. We know they were predisposed towards worrying about family, and that all went out the window once the question of the honor of God was at stake. And therefore, they don't have a specific mission. They have a universal mission. Who was loyal to God? Come join me. That's the Levites. You have no specific mission, and therefore you don't have a specific land. The Levites are ready for whatever is needed. Whatever job needs to get done, Levites answer the call. And the Rambam tells us that this mission is still available to anyone. We don't know what tribe we're from, unless you're from the tribe of Levi. And we don't have a prophet, not like Jacob, not like Moshe, to tell us what our specific mission should be. But any person can say, I want to be a Levite. I want to commit myself completely. I want to be loyal to God, whatever needs to get done. Whether or not it fits into my character profile, my unique qualities. Whatever it is, I'm in. That is the level of Levi. And again, today we don't have this idea of division of the land. We don't have prophets to come tell us what we need to do. The Levite mission, that is still alive. To say whatever the nation needs, whatever God needs, to be part of God's army. And to say whenever there's a calling, I will answer. Someone who accepts that, they are the holy of holies, in the words of Rambam. We like, of course, to end the Parsha podcast with a question. The final question of this cycle. The seventh cycle, would you believe it? The seventh cycle of the Parsha podcast is nearing its close with the help of the Almighty. And we're going to focus on the final verse of the Torah. After Moshe blesses the tribes, ascends the mountain, he dies, is buried, and there's a eulogy. And the final verse of the eulogy is talking about the great hand, the strong hand, and the great power that Moshe manifested before the eyes of all of Israel. What does this mean? Of course, Rashi tells us. The strong hand that Moshe accepted the Torah in his hands. The great miracles, that's all the miracles that happened in the wilderness, the great wilderness. Before the eyes of all of Israel, that Moshe was inspired to shatter, to destroy the tablets before the eyes of all of Israel. And God agreed with Moshe. And the final words in Rashi, God said to Moshe, I appreciate that you shattered these tablets. Now, just to get some context here, why, when Moshe accepted the tablets in his hands, why does that mean that he has a strong hand? So the commentaries here cite the Midrash, that at the very moment when God was transferring the tablets to Moshe, at that very moment, the nation was doing the sin of the golden calf. And once the nation sinned, God wanted to withdraw the tablets. So God hands over the tablets to Moshe. Moshe is accepting them. And when the tablets, in the words of the Midrash, the tablets were half, part of it, one end of it was being held by Moshe, and the other hand, so to speak, or the other end was, so to speak, being held by God. At that moment, the moment of the transfer, that's when the sin of the golden calf happened, and God wants to pull it back. But Moshe demonstrated, in the words of the Midrash, a strong hand. God wants to pull it away from Moshe. And Moshe, there's a tug of war here, so the Midrash says. And Moshe pulls it away from God. And Moshe has a strong hand, and he, so to speak, overpowers God. That's, of course, a show-stopping midrash. But then what does Moshe do? He takes it and he shatters it before the eyes of all of Israel. And God praises Moshe. And the last part, the finale, the climax of Moshe's eulogy, what's the final praise? What's the grand finale? What's this capstone of Moshe's greatness? That he shattered the tablets. That's the pinnacle. That's the greatest accomplishment of Moshe's life, shattering the tablets. So obviously all of this is very hard for us to understand. To shatter the tablets. Can you imagine? The reverence that we have with the Torah scroll, that would be amplified 1,000 times, you would imagine, by the tablets. Moshe doesn't just drop it, he shatters it on the floor. How is that at all appropriate? And question number 2 is, how is this the peak of Moshe's life? This is the greatest thing that God can say about Moshe. And also Moshe's behavior, it seems to be contradictory. On one hand, he's displaying a strong hand and he's overpowering God. He's yanking the tablets away from God, overriding, so to speak, the will of God. And then he takes it and he shatters it. What is going on over here? Something very deep and very beautiful over here. And it's a very appropriate way to end the Parshat podcast cycle number 7. The nation does the sin of the golden calf, and God wants to withdraw tablets. This is not the nation that is deserving of these tablets. And Moshe apparently disagrees. I'm saying apparently because it's hard to say that he thinks the nation is deserving, because after all, he shatters the tablets. So which is it? God says the nation is not deserving, and Moshe also says the nation is not deserving. Where is this point of disagreement, so to speak, between God and Moshe? Here's the difference. Everyone agrees the nation is undeserving of the tablets. But God wanted the tablets to remain in heaven. And Moshe says, no, I want them down below with the nation shattered into 1,000,000 shards. And this is Moshe's major accomplishment, that the nation has shards of the tablet. And this is the greatest praise of Moshe, that he was able to procure for an undeserving nation shards of the tablets. Now, what happened to these broken pieces of the tablets? Of course, we know they are placed in the Ark of the Covenant, together with a second set of the tablets. And they're side by side. And the Talmud tells us, if you see a Torah scholar who forgot his Torah, you must accord them honor. And the reason why is because the tablets, the intact ones, and the broken ones are side by side in the Ark. The broken tablets, that symbolizes someone who had Torah, but lost it. And such a person still commands a certain status, a certain honor, a certain distinction. They're not tablets. They're broken tablets, but they still have an association with what they had previously. Yes, they are empty of Torah right now, but they still have some association. They're still connected with it on some level. The tablets, they're shattered. But Moshe ensured that the nation still has some association with Sinai. This is Moshe's greatest accomplishment, even after the golden calf, even after everyone agrees that the nation is rendered undeserving of Torah. we still have some association with the tablets. A Jew is found to be undeserving of Torah. Is still, thanks to Moshe's intercession, his strong hand, and performing great feats before the eyes of the nation, still has an association with those tablets. The imprint of Sinai can be found on the hearts of every Jew, even after the shattering of the relationship with the golden calf. And no matter what happens, no matter how far a Jew may be from the ideals of Sinai, the impact of Sinai still exists. It cannot be eradicated, and it is forever embedded in their hearts. This is a beautiful way for us to end off year 7 of the Parshat podcast. We may be undeserving of Torah. We may be vessels that are not worthy of harboring the Almighty's Torah. But Moshe's greatest accomplishment is that we're never too far. We always maintain some eternal connection to Sinai. And I think that that's really why we're still here. Our nation is forever associated with Sinai, with Torah, with Moshe, with the tablets, and with the Almighty. It's been 3,000 years since Sinai. It's been 3,000 years since Moshe passed. And on Simchas Torah, the festival that we're going to read, the HaBerachah, millions of Jews throughout the world will be dancing with the Torah. The only nation that dances with their books is us. We're so deeply and intimately connected, eternally connected to Torah, no matter how far we may be, no matter how undeserving we are. We're forever connected. On such a deep, intimate level, we dance together. Nobody else, no other nation dances with their books. No other nation dances with it. And our book has been part of our nation for a very long time. But the intensity, the flame of this relationship doesn't die out. That is what Moshe did. He agreed with God. We're not deserving at that time. We're not deserving of Torah, but we are deserving of still maintaining some association. And that association can be rekindled and reclaimed. And alongside the shards are those intact tablets as well. What a beautiful idea to end off this cycle of the Parsha podcast. I want to thank, of course, the Almighty. We have to thank the Almighty for every breath that we take. Al kol neshima uneshima, the Midrash tells us. Every time you breathe, you have to thank the Almighty. And how much more so must we thank the Almighty that we get to breathe and to study His Torah, to live a higher level of living, and to be able to each week gather together and study the Almighty's Torah. We thank the Almighty for the past, and of course we pray for the future, that year 8, please God, should be an incredible year of Torah study together. I'm looking forward to doing that with y'all each week. Of course, my email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. Hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their Sukkot festival, an exuberant Shabbos and Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres upcoming. Please God, just as we finished year 7, may we embark on year 8 with a lot of success and a lot of joy, as is fitting for this pursuit. We'll gather again, dialing it back or forward, all the way back to Genesis. I'm not really ready, but we'll do it, please God. And again, the email address is rabbiwolbe@gmail.com. I want to hear your questions, your comments, and your feedback.